On September 4th, 1989, Bonnie Raitt was at the beginning of her career rejuvenation with radio airplay gathering for the title track of her Nick of Time album. Raitt had struggled with substance abuse and limited commercial success ever since her emergence in the early 70s in the folk blues scene. Her cover of Del Shannon's Runaway in 78 gave her a hit, and she references Nick of Time as being her most successful record since then. But little did anyone, including Bob Costas in this interview from later, know that Raitt would explode the following decade and on, and be lauded as one of our greatest folk blues musicians. Not only one of our best female folk blues musicians, but there's no doubt in that. Raitt had come from a show business and religious family. Her father, John, was a longtime Broadway musical actor and performer. Her uncle Thomas was a religion professor at my alma mater, the College of Worcester. Bonnie had performed on campus shortly before I started attending, and she was always a favorite, and actually would come and stop by and visit her uncle when her tour bus was anywhere near. And those days were buzz-filled days at the College of Worcester. Well, what do you mean? All the days were buzz-filled days at the College of Worcester? For some of us, not everybody. Chime in, those people who went to Worcester with me that did not have buzz-filled days. Ouch! I got stung again.
Thanks for staying up later. I'm Bob Costas. Bonnie Raitt is with us tonight, and her latest album, which is about her 10th or 11th over the past decade or so, is Nick of Time, and A Thing Called Love is on that album. Are we looking at a mainstream hit here, a big-time mainstream hit?
Well, it's the most airplay I've gotten in a while. In this decade, with a lot of new wave music and punk music and heavy metal dominating the airwaves, that kind of rhythm and blues, roots-oriented rock and roll hasn't really found a place. And I think on the album-oriented rock stations, it's called AOR. That was actually got up there, so I'm pretty pleased.
When your first album, self-titled Bonnie Raitt album, came out in the early 70s, video was not a factor. Now, regardless of what kind of record it is, if it's going to sell, if you're going to reach the people you're looking to reach, you have to not just make a video, it's got to be an effective video.
Yeah, I mean, I was nervous about it because I can be one kind of presentation and come off and be comfortable in a live situation because I've been doing it for 20 years, but when that camera comes up close, especially if you're not a youngster, you know, you get kind of nervous there being on MTV right next to some hot dance mama, you know. So I rectified that by getting Dennis Quaid to star as my validity and, you know, have someone to play off of in my
A shrewd move.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I mean, who better would you want to play off of for a whole day of shooting?
Me personally, I might have a different choice. But.
Yeah, well, he was great, and he coached me a lot and made me laugh a lot and leered at me just enough to make me not nervous.
Am I dating myself when I say, I'm not talking about teeny bopper top 40 stuff, but I'm talking about the sort of rhythm and blues based rock and roll you're fond of and that comprises a good portion of your repertoire. Isn't that, by and large, a whole lot better than most of what's on the radio now? Or am I just fossilizing at age 37?
I think that those of us that, you know, you tend to like the music that you grew up around, and Motown and Stax Volt and Aretha Franklin and the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and the Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Those kind of groups are the stuff that I grew up on, as well as the blues and folk music influences. So I tend to like the people I liked then if they're doing good work. But I also think that there's a lot of great new stuff out. Nena Cherry and the Fine Young Cannibals and you know, Melissa Etheridge and the Judds, and I think there's some good stuff. You just have to wade through it and find out what you like. And I think that sometimes the bottom line in the record business these days, selling as many albums as you can, it disenfranchises some people like myself or Ry Cooder or people that do music that's kind of fringe, more roots-oriented music. We We're not in it for the tonnage, you know, we're in it for a select group of people that want to hear what we do.
Who were your heroes when you were 9, 10, 11 years old, started picking your first chords on a guitar?
Odetta and Joan Baez were it for me, and then and Peter, Paul and Mary and Bob Dylan on the folk end, and I really liked John Lennon and the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. Remember, my parents were very upset when I liked the Rolling Stones, but I tried to then encourage me to like the Beatles again because they were more wholesome.
I can remember that as, you know, 64, 65. At first, the Beatles were sort of looked upon as harmless.
Yeah.
They were like these nice, because Ed Sullivan always said they're very nice boys. He tried to reassure all the adults. I spoke backstage with these boys. Even though their hair's a little long, they're fine boys.
They're not shaking their hips like that Elvis guy.
But there's no question that when Mick Jagger and Keith Richards showed up with the Rolling Stones, there was no sugarcoating this.
Yeah, and then my mother looked at the album cover, and, you know, they were in my room. I think that's when people all over America, the Beatles went up in stock with parents, which made us, of course, like the Rolling Stones even more. And then, of course, I started liking all these old black blues singers who were singing about stuff that I wasn't even supposed to know about, and so they were pretty confused at that point. But my heroes were Aretha Franklin and Tina Turner, you know, all back then.
Of course, your parents had a musical background of their own, but it certainly wasn't rock and roll or rhythm and blues.
Sure.
Your dad, John Raitt, famous Broadway performer.
Yeah,
Carousel and
original
Pajama
leading man in
Game.
Carousel and Pajama Game. I get to meet Doris Day, who was another hero of mine because she didn't wear any makeup over her freckles when she was shooting Pajama Game. Yeah, they were pretty perplexed when I was singing this stuff. I mean, it's one thing to be musical, it's another thing to be singing songs that were written before there were songwriters there singing songs. So.
Is there any one moment you can think of when your parents had to come to grips with the fact that little Bonnie was up there on stage doing something a little bit different than Carousel or Pajama Game?
Yeah, I invited them to my first gig at the Second Fret in Philadelphia in about 1969. I was 19. And one of the songs I opened with, and I didn't even think about it until they were out there, and right before it was Willie Dixon's song, I'm built for comfort, not for speed, and I got everything all you good men need. And I went, what am I doing? I was pretty embarrassed. I think they were too. But they understood. They know me now. It ain't going to go away because it's in me and it's got to come out.
Did they take great satisfaction?
Yeah, my dad is still busy on the road doing Shenandoah and South Pacific. He does the white-haired roles now, and he's still robust and handsome and sings better than ever as far as I'm concerned, and is really happy to see me getting kind of a new resurgence of interest because it's always frustrating. I get very loyal towards him. If people don't appreciate him, I get real upset. And I'm sure that in the 80s, when I wasn't getting the best deserving attention, I'm sure there's times when he wanted to go into Warner Brothers with a baseball bat and shake him up a little bit, but you know, you pick this for a living. It's not something parents encourage their kids to do because it's so unfair and it's kind of brutalizing. You know, you can work really hard and be pretty talented and not go anywhere, or you can just be a flash in the pan and be washed up in a year, or you can be, you know, no talent and get to the top. So,
how easily can your belief in yourself be shaken by various forms of rejection? If your records don't sell, even though obviously there was always a period of time where people wanted to see Bonnie Raitt, if your records don't sell, or if 1 out of 10 reviews is not just critical but is harsh and personally hurtful, how easily can that throw you off stride?
Yeah, that coupled with the fact that doing this for a living for a woman makes it hard to maintain relationships that are healthy with, you'd have to have a certain kind of man that isn't intimidated by a woman who's independent and successful, and it's... Well, for me, you know, in my mid-30s, it was a pretty brutal time to be dropped by my label, and I had a bad love affair, and my rock and roll lifestyle seemed to be catching up with me, and I was looking at more and more gigs on the road to keep my head above water financially because I didn't have the support of the record company or any airplay, really. And next thing I knew, I just kind of let my health go, and I let the partying take over, and I kind of lost a sense of myself, even though that moment on stage, I would never do anything to jeopardize my fans liking what I did, and I really respect their paying to see me and supporting me all those years. But afterwards, my self-esteem just, I drowned my sorrows in the classic way, and I'm sure, you know, I know my folks and my friends were concerned, as are all of us when we see somebody kind of lose their way like that. It's a brutal business to be in, but I'm also very aware of how lucky and pampered we get to be and overpaid a lot of the time.
That was part of what I was getting to with Nick of Time. Was it kind of a lifeline?
Well, the song Nick of Time was, you know, the title of the album was called that because really none of the other titles lent themselves, but also because it's a song about, it's a centerpiece of the album. It's one that I wrote after not being able to write anything for a while. It represents a clarity of and maturity that came with, you know, I got straight a couple of years ago, 2.5 years ago, and I've been pretty much living a healthier, more positive lifestyle. So I had to do something or else I just would have been beaten down completely. So I think this whole record represents a coming out of a dark period for me. So I think it was that decision to get some help that was in the nick of time. The album was just the fruit of it.
Yeah. When you say get straight, drugs, alcohol?
Drugs, alcohol, you know,
both. The whole gamut.
I mean, I have fun now. I just don't, I'm one of those types that just had to cool it, you know. I mean, you can do things recreationally for a while, and then after about 15 years, I found that my whole generation of rock and rollers pretty much had to take another look at what we were doing because it really was started to take over. And I really don't miss it at all, which you hear is an old story these days, but I mention it because I think it's important for people to know you can still be funky and funny and have a good time and be as sassy and as sexy as you want to be without having to be artificially fueled to feel like that.
When you do songs, as you have throughout your career, that are covers of classics, when you cover Joni Mitchell stuff, or James Taylor stuff, or when you do Del Shannon's Runaway, do you hear from the original artists?
Yeah, Del Shannon really likes my version of Runaway. Even though, as it was really inspired by Love and Happiness by Al Green. I mean, that was the groove that was just killing me at the time and still does. And I was just playing around with that guitar change one day and started singing Runaway. Next thing I know, we put it on the record, which was probably the most successful record I've had up until this last one. And Joni and James were friends of mine and really liked that. Joni, one time when I was really young, played Midway, that song about the Midway, at the Troubadour, and she stood up and applauded out of the audience. You know, I didn't even know she was there, so I was pretty thrilled.
Talk about some real verification there.
Yeah,
huh?
I was really nervous to attempt something that
Have you ever heard from anybody or heard of within the business somebody hearing from the original person who said, you have butchered this thing, you have ruined my life?
Brutal. No, I haven't heard any negative stuff, you know, thank goodness. I'm pretty careful with what I try to cover. I mean, if somebody, you know, I may sing an Aretha Franklin song here and there for fun in my sets as a tribute, you know, just because it's such great music. But boy, I mean, I'd certainly never try to put it on a record, I don't think, unless I thought I could do a different and better version of it.
I guess this isn't the same thing as a vocalist, but sometimes you get on an elevator or something and you hear the Johnny Man singers going, come on, baby, light my fire.
Yeah,
and
or
you go,
Satisfaction.
How could they do this? What's the meaning of this?
Yeah, I've never been successful enough to have my music turn into those kind of versions of it.
It's a blessing.
And I suppose you get money for them, so that would be nice if you write them, but, you know, the first time I heard Satisfaction by the Rolling Stones as music, I just cringed.
You used to do a lot of politically oriented stuff. Maybe not the music itself, but taking the music on stage for political purposes.
Yeah,
No Nukes concert and whatnot. Do you do it as much as you used to?
Yeah, I've been pretty actively involved with the Central American issue. I just was lobbying earlier this week in Washington, met with a bunch of senators trying to influence a vote to stop aid to El Salvador without checking whether the human rights violations have stopped. And I think that's really important that we don't just give our money and send troops places and advisors without really having the American public aware of what we're doing. And that and a lot of environmental issues, you know, toxic waste dumping and the nuclear issue, of course, has been something I've been involved in when I got involved with the Karen Silkwood defense case, and then No Nukes. And
there was the Sun City video, too.
Yeah, a lot of different things, and the rainforest. There's a lot of different peace and justice, progressive causes that I'm interested in.
How much practical good do you think that winds up doing?
Oh, I think a lot. I mean,
or is it just good for the soul of the artist who does it?
Well, I think if you do it in a way that's not proselytizing and preaching. I mean, when I do benefits, it tends to be probably by the time people know who I am, they're also the kind of the people that are, you know, for stopping apartheid in South Africa and environmentally kind of pro no nukes and all that, if that's possible to say. So I would say in my case, I think I just raise money for issues and sing to people basically already converted. But when you get a big artist like Bruce Springsteen, or someone who can make a film about an issue and really hit home with it, like, you know, even something like Platoon, I mean, the futility of war really is driven home great when it's not done in a preachy way. And I think that the political music that's out these days is a lot less fruity and offensive than the stuff that I was turning down when I started out. I still don't do a lot of political music in my shows at all, just because I think other people can do it better.
Are you encouraged then by Tracy Chapman's success? Because a lot of her stuff is obviously overtly political.
And the fact that she got up at the Grammys and was wearing jeans and no makeup, I mean, I was in tears from that. It was really one of the most extraordinary events that happened in this culture for me, to see the swing away from all that disco escapist kind of stuff. I mean, I like to dance too, but it doesn't mean you can't strip away some of the artifice and the superficiality and get to the meat of the matter and the matters that, you know, there's a tremendous amount of homelessness, there's a tremendous amount of drug problems, there's war everywhere. You can't just ignore it.
Rolling into the night here with Bonnie Raitt, deep into the night, I guess. Life on the road, how tough is it for a female musician who very often is the only one or one of maybe only a couple of females in a large group of males?
Well,
or maybe it's pretty good.
For those of you women who are still deep in the night with me, you know, there's an aspect of this that's very fun, which is you get a lot of male attention and affection. It gets very camp-like on the road. But the other side of it is after 3 months of being in a locker room, you get kind of lonely for some female companionship, just to look at nails and earrings and silly things that, you know, just to be around somebody you can borrow a sweater from, you know, that isn't 40 sizes too big. I think if I didn't really love being on the road, I'd have to be crazy to do this for this long, because my strength is the live performance part, and the albums, especially now that I've never had the luxury of airplay, really, so I knew that I wanted to do this for the rest of my life, as the great jazz and blues musicians do, or looks, it doesn't matter if you look older or you're brokenhearted or successful or not successful, people will understand that you're singing from your heart and will come to see you. And you better like the musicians you're with. And I have a really great band and crew who I pick as much for their personalities and their heart as I do for their musicianship and their capabilities. I really, at this point, I'll be 40 in a couple of months, and I'm longing for a little bit more of a stable lifestyle. I love to travel, and it's what I do. I love to do my political work and my Rhythm and Blues Foundation work, but I've been single for a couple of years too lately, and it's when you don't have anybody to go home to, except, you know, I have some great relationships, but I have a feeling that this road is my middle name, as I name one of my songs. That stuff's going to get a little old as I get old. Yeah. I'm going to just have to tone it down, because I really miss having some sort of stability.
The Rhythm and Blues Foundation is something people might not be familiar with. And,
yeah, it's
very,
brand new.
Very simply, it's like the Actors Equity Fund or the pension fund for ball players. There's a lot of people who contributed to the history of the craft who have not been financially rewarded and are older now and need the dough, right? Yeah,
and a lot of these people don't get paid enough, period. I mean, there weren't any royalty setups when a lot of these pioneers of rhythm and blues that recorded the singles just got paid scale, and they didn't make enough money through the union to get health insurance, and a lot of them are older now and have health problems. And so this foundation, one of the things is to get the record companies to donate proceeds from a lot of the repackaging of these records, and Atlantic Records has done that, and MCA and Motown, and now we have access. We have offices in the Smithsonian. We're getting ready to produce a big concert at Madison Square Garden, which is, my end of it is to coordinate bringing some of the great rhythm and blues fan artists and big stars of today mixed up with people on stage like Ruth Brown or like Sam Moore from Sam and Dave, and Robert Cray's going to be doing it, and Steve Cropper. We got a women's segment that with Etta James, hopefully, and some of the great rhythm and blues artists. And hopefully between the television show we film and the recording and this health insurance plan, it will get some, not only some money raised, but some recognition. And that's about the most exciting thing I'm working on lately, the most positive one.
Thank you for watching Cleveland Live Music. I can't play a lick. That's why I'm a taper. Thanks for watching the channel and making it grow. If you want to subscribe, that'd be appreciated. Patreon and GoFundMe would be appreciated. Maybe I could get guitar lessons.